Hi, everyone. This is KLMeri.
And this is Soda.
We are back with another podcast of 2023. This time, we are going to discuss the show Star Trek Picard, which has 3 seasons. And as we know, season 3 is the last season of Picard. So we felt it was appropriate to give you guys a rundown of what the show was about and or really Soda's experience of watching the show, since she's the one who's seen the most of it between the two of us.
Yeah. How much did you see?
Great question. When we were talking about doing this as a podcast, I had only seen probably 4 episodes of the first season, maybe 3.5, because I might have jumped out at like
I see.
all things considered. Once it was kind of confirmed or pretty much obvious who the female was that Picard meets, then I kind of jumped
Yeah.
out of the show. And I didn't pick it
Yeah.
back up. And we talked about doing this podcast. My plan of attack for that was not to sit and binge watch 3 seasons. um, as much as that could have happened, didn't have the time for that. So I watched the first episode and last episode, or last set of episodes if it was a 2-part finale of the seasons. So I went and rewatched the first episode of the first season, and then I watched the finale and so on and so forth for season 2 and season 3. I think that's going to give me a pretty unique perspective.
I'm pretty sure.
What a way to be introduced to characters that show up mid-season and you've never seen before, and then. But I will say the advantage of the episodes of Picard is they give you recaps, and so
Yeah.
it was very helpful, even recapping like the first episode of the next season and the finales, especially the finales, because they pretty much walk me through all the major plot points of the full season for that finale episode. So,
Yeah.
so I try to pay close attention to it and be like, okay, who's that character? Who's that character? These two seem like they're into each other. Okay. As well as kind of understanding like which returning characters we were seeing as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so then I watched I definitely have some opinions.
Yeah. I'm going to guess they're not that good because, and I don't blame you. I mean, if they were, I mean, you watched the first episode and it didn't make you want to see the next one. It just made you want to jump to the last one
Yeah.
of the season. So I'm guessing your opinions were overall not stellar.
Yeah, and I guess it's unfortunate. I mean, I wanted to want to watch the show, and I got into like this third season of the first season. It was
The
it
third
was in
episode, you mean?
yeah, the third episode of the first season. There were new things going on, and I love Patrick Stewart, and I love watching him like just play a role, whether it's
Yeah.
Picard or something else, Shakespeare, who knows. But it just couldn't keep my interest.
Yeah. I mean, we both love Star Trek,
Yeah.
and we want to enjoy Star Trek shows. We love, the Next Generation isn't our favorite, but we still like it.
Mhm.
And Patrick Stewart is a great actor. We
Yeah.
both came in wanting to like this. Spoilers, we both didn't.
I know, spoilers.
Yeah.
Interesting is that a few weeks ago, I saw Patrick Stewart on a late night TV show promoting season 3, and essentially as the final season of his Picard show.
Yeah.
The late night host talked with him about like why did he come back to playing Jean-Luc Picard after 20 years.
Yeah.
He did admit like he did not think he would return to the role, that the kind of the story for Picard was done. But then the producers convinced him there was more to tell, and that the Picard of 20 years after the last movie, the last Next Generation movie. How do I put it? He was kind of lost,
Yeah.
right? And I think we
Yeah.
see that when the first season opens up. So there was unfinished business for him, basically, and that's how they convinced Patrick Stewart to pick up his old role. Um, so for him, it sounded like he's actually enjoyed getting to play this character again through the new struggles that the older Picard goes through.
Well, I'm happy for him if that's how he feels.
My point is, to him it has been, I think, a worthwhile project.
Yeah, as I said,
To him.
I'm happy for him if that's how it feels. As an outside spectator, I don't really agree with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, look, I said we both wanted to enjoy this because we both
Yeah.
want to enjoy Star Trek shows.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, when I heard they're making a show about Picard, I did not see it go well.
Yeah.
Because of all the shows, The Next Generation had the best regarded finale, I think. So it just had the best regarded finale of all these Star Trek shows, right?
Yeah.
And also they had 4 more movies on top of that.
Yeah.
So why make another show about a character from a show that already kind of finished off all of its possible stories? Like, and I know why. I mean, I know why. We all know why. It's not because they had more stories. It's because The Next Generation is a popular show, and Patrick Stewart is a popular actor, and they want to use it.
And it was an opportunity to bring back other characters in some fashion.
Yeah, but those characters could have returned in other iterations. It didn't have to center around Picard of all characters. The reason it's centered around Picard is because they want to bring back the nostalgia, and they want to bring the cloud that came with Patrick Stewart's name and the Next Generation name.
That's
It was
true.
kind of a cash grab. Let's face it, it was kind of a cash grab.
I mean, your points are valid because the 3 seasons truly do follow Picard for the most part. There are returning characters, especially from the Next Generation. Like in season 3, we get to see returning characters a lot, but it's all about Picard and what Picard is doing and what kind of conspiracy Picard is trying to uncover.
Yeah, and I mean the most prominent returning character aside from Picard is actually 7 of 9 from Voyager.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would have watched a 7 of 9 show with much more excitement than I watched the Picard show.
Yeah, so true. And then I would say the other actor who gets returning actor who gets a lot of screen time is Brent Spiner. Just not as one character.
That is so. Yeah, Data was the most popular character on The Next Generation.
Yeah.
The thing is, Data died in the last Next Generation movie. And they are basically doing backflips, trying to bring him back in any sort of iteration throughout the entire series, not just the first season. Just throughout the entire series, they just keep finding excuses to shove him back in there.
I know, and we can talk about it a little more in depth later, but it's kind of funny when the Data character is, I don't want to come back.
Yeah, it's like they're forcing him back into the series.
I know.
And like I said, the most egregious part is those characters had like complete arcs. Their stories were done before the show. They were done. We didn't need to see more of them. And the show never really gave us a good reason why we need more of them. We really don't.
Yeah, it's more like they just just dropped us into whatever was going on
Yeah.
in 20 years and said, well, we're going to watch we're going to focus on what's happening in this part of the Alpha Quadrant with this
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, and I mean, some people might say, well, the original series, died off, and then 20 years later, it still made movies. I mean, the last original series movie was made in the 90s. But that's because the original series never really got a good final.
No,
Never
they
really
just
got
cut us
a
off in the
send up.
middle of the 5-year mission.
Exactly. And they actually had a story they had to finish.
Yeah.
The same can't be said for the Next
Yeah.
Generation. It got 7 seasons and 4 movies. It did not need more. And some people might say the 4 movies were even too much.
So this is set 20 years after the last movie, which is Nemesis, right?
Yes. The plot of Nemesis was about the Picard clone and the Romulans, but
Right.
the interesting thing about Picard is that it makes the events of the first alternate timeline movies canon to the mainline Star Trek movies, Star Trek franchise universe. Basically, Romulus got destroyed. Romulus got destroyed, and the Romulans are now homeless.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. When that first came up when I started watching Picard, I was scratching my head, going, "Is this Abrams' verse? What happened?"
Yeah, they took inspiration from the Abrams verse. But yeah, it made canon those events. The Romulans got destroyed, and the Romulans are refugees, basically. But the main point of the first season of Picard was to take probably the best regarded episode in the second season of The Next Generation, Measure of a Man, which kind of questioned Data's humanity and his human rights as a result.
Yeah.
And kind of stretched it out throughout the whole season. Basically, the Federation banned synthetic life forms, which are basically androids.
Yeah.
All throughout the Federation because of some events that happened around the time Romulus got destroyed. And all research into androids was kind of stopped. And Picard kind of falls into a sort of conspiracy about androids and data and the Soongs, all of the Soongs. There are so many Soongs. And it's like, it could have been interesting, but it felt so regurgitated. It felt regurgitated.
The Data protege actually turns out to be this young woman who approaches Picard that at first people do not realize is essentially a synthetic.
Yeah.
She doesn't know it. She thinks she's human.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of guessed very quickly that was, quote, Data's daughter. I think it was kind of obvious what they were going for there. And so it's really following, to me it feels like, okay, it's following this resentment of the Romulans, this conspiracy going on with synthetics that pulls in this new young woman and then Picard gets entangled up in it all.
Yeah. And there is a cult of Romulans who hate synths, and there's like this like Romulan nuns who believe in complete truth, nothing but the truth. And there is also a subplot about the Borg, because they have to also put the Borg in everything. And the Borg versus the Romulans versus the Synths, and it's convoluted, and it's, the original series, the original episode, Measure of Man, kind of had it as a one and done. There was a discussion about Data's human rights, and it kind of ended it. And here we have an entire season, and it doesn't feel like it gave us much more than what we already had.
So can we talk for a moment about Picard, his feelings towards Starfleet in the beginning of the Picard show?
Okay, well, in the Picard show at the beginning, Picard is retired. He's like an honorary admiral or something like that, but he is officially retired. And he has these two Romulans living in his house. He lives in, Chateau Picard with the
Yeah.
vineyard and everything. He has two Romulan
But he
assistants living in his
retired
house.
in protest, didn't he? Because the Federation didn't help the Romulans.
Well, they started kind of helping them, and then because of the sins, they stopped. And
Right.
yeah, he retired. He retired in protest.
So we start where basically he didn't leave on good terms.
Yeah, which is another thing. Picard's Starfleet is very bigoted. Yeah. Um, but as I was saying, I just kind of want to talk about the characters because, well, I'll explain. He has two Romulans living in his house, and good luck remembering them because one of them kind of disappears completely, only to be. We're told the next season that he died off screen. Like,
I had actually wondered that when I was watching the
yeah,
finale. I was like, where is that other one? Because there's two of
yeah,
them, and they both seem kind of devoted to Picard.
yeah. And the other one is there, but she is like in so few episodes. And the show introduces other new characters, but they just don't take. There is one character that I'll say has an actual staying power, which is Raffi Muskier,
Mm-hmm.
who is also a former Starfleet officer who also left Starfleet because of the changes that Starfleet has gone through.
Yeah.
The way it became more bigoted and closed off from the outside.
And this is an interesting character because I didn't really know who she was until in the finale, and I was going, "Who is this?" And then I realized, "Oh wait, this is like another Starfleet person."
Yeah.
But someone who's also struggled within Starfleet and struggles with other personal issues.
Yeah, but the thing is, she has staying power almost despite herself because
Yeah.
the show is absolutely not interested in giving these new characters anything interesting to do.
Mm.
There are other new characters. There's Dr. Jurati, who
Mm-hmm.
helped the Soon, who was also interested in Sims, but has, kind of a checkered past. We have Commander Rios, who also has kind of a checkered past, who
Mm-hmm.
helps Picard. They're just not interesting, and the show doesn't even try to make them interesting. And there's, the Data clone daughter, Soji, and she's also not very interesting. The show gives them nothing. The show basically gave them nothing. It was only interested in legacy characters, and it's tiring. It's just tiring.
You know what I find interesting is that a lot of these human quote characters are like former Starfleet. Like they've all
Yeah,
had some kind of issue with Starfleet,
yeah.
much like Picard.
Well,
They seem kind of like a ragtag band, if you will.
they are a ragtag band. I think Jurati wasn't ever in Starfleet, but they're kind of a ragtag band. That's kind of the deal of the first season, especially
Yeah.
that Picard is going against Starfleet, so he gets this ragtag group of former scientists and officers to help him out.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is like the show is just not interested in them. And you know what? I don't know actually if the show isn't interested in them or it's just if the writers were just not good enough to make us interested in them. And the only reason we're interested in the returning characters is because we know them from other projects.
Right.
So that was the first season. The first season is basically all about Picard and Data, which it's like I'm sorry if I sound too negative. I just didn't like this show very much, and I watched all of it. So I had to make something of it.
Well, before we move on to the second season, let's talk about probably the most controversial thing at the end of the first season.
No, I am talking about the first season. Another thing I want to talk about the first season is Data. Data
Yeah.
is kind of a big element of this show, but okay, so let's talk about the ending. In the end of the season, Data dies
Yeah.
again. Um, and it's portrayed as like a beautiful moment that he gets to say goodbye to Picard. But like, isn't it disrespectful to Data that he only gets to say goodbye to Picard? Like, if you think about Data in the Next Generation, it wasn't like Picard was his best friend.
No.
No. He never got to say Geordi was kind of his best friend, and we don't even see him, and this entire season is about Data.
Well, but that's the thing. The show's about Picard, and Picard's the one who feels deeply about Data's death. It's not about Data having died. It's about Picard feeling bad about Data having died.
Oh, I
And it's
see.
for closure for Picard, which is
Of course.
I agree, very selfish from
Yeah.
a character perspective for Data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they kill other characters in the first season. They kill Ichib, I think it's called Ichib. One of the Borg kids from Voyager,
Yep.
basically. They also kill Hugh the Borg. It's just kind of disrespectful for characters. I mean, okay, Ichib maybe wasn't many people's favorite character, but a lot of people liked Hugh.
Yeah.
And just having him killed, the episode he is introduced back in, just
Hmm.
people kind of wanted to see what was up with Hugh. Like, he was an interesting guy. And then he was killed off for Picard.
But if we back up a second, so coming into the finale, what I took away from the recap was that there was this whole like
Yeah,
settlement of synthetics who were, you
yeah,
know, who of course were feeling marginalized and it threatened, right? Their existence felt threatened, and were attempting to contact something they didn't really understand, but they felt that was going to benefit them in being recognized as real people.
yeah.
It almost felt kind of like a revenge type situation. Like the synthetics come
Basically, yeah.
back swinging hard against those who attempted to wipe them out.
Yeah.
And that's who Picard ends up with. And then, there's some Romulans involved. There's some Romulans coming to wipe out the synthetics.
Of course.
Of course, Picard has to pull like a really repeat maneuver from something else that he did in the Next Generation
Yeah.
to save the day. And then it culminates in, oh, we forgot to mention he's got a terminal illness this whole time. He's
I mean, it's
dying.
they mentioned it in the first episode, and then they kind of forgot about it until the very end.
Exactly. Oh, okay. So that's that. I didn't miss much then because yeah, he has illness in the first, and it shows back up in the finale and essentially kills him, or so you
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. And then we find out that he got a synthetic body.
Correct. So there you
But
go.
but that's but the synthetic body is exactly like his human body, and it also ages, and he will also still die of old age. So, like, okay,
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like they cracked the code and put him in essentially back in his own body just without the illness.
yeah,
It was definitely a way to write out the terminal illness that they gave him. It's kind of silly.
it was also completely unnecessary. I mean,
Exactly.
what did it achieve? It meant nothing.
Exactly. You didn't need the terminal illness plot, therefore you didn't need the synthetic body to save the character so he could come back for 2 seasons.
Yeah. Well, that was the first season, and then we have the second season, which is like, the first season was like it was convoluted. It was a lot of rehashed plots, and it felt like a cash grab. The second season is like this, but on steroids. Yeah. Oh, but by the way, if we didn't mention the first season, 7 of 9 is back.
Yeah.
She's back. She's also around. Again, the ragtag group of people who are from Starfleet. Turns out Seven was in Starfleet, and then she left for some reason. we know. She is like the most, she seems to have the most interesting backstory, but we never really focus on her. Because Picard keeps hogging all of the attention. Picard and the Romulan conspiracy and the synthetic conspiracy. And it's also uninteresting. I just want to know what happened to Seven. That's all I wanted to know.
So then I guess we come into season 2.
Yeah.
Picard
season
is
2.
He's like what, out of retirement now? He's overseeing like Starfleet Academy or something.
Yeah. And we get, in the first season we had like this Romulan kid that Picard sort of adopted, kind of was mentoring, and he was like, he was mentoring for a while. The kid, I say kid, but he was like 19 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eleanor. That was his name.
Eleanor. Yeah. The second season is kind of like even a more ridiculous notion than the first season because, well, the second season is about the Borg. Let's not mince word. It's about the Borg.
Yeah.
And the Borg, when the Borg were first introduced in the Next Generation, people really liked them. They were cool, interesting villains. They kind of had this scary concept. They were kind of like horror sci-fi concept, this kind of hive mind alien that doesn't really have emotions.
Okay. The Borg were like almost like the undefeatable enemy.
Yeah.
up to the movies.
Yeah. But then, one of their coolest features was that they were like a hive mind. Like you kill one of them, they don't care basically because there is another one to replace. But the movies introduced the concept of the Borg Queen, which for the movies it worked fine. You needed like the Borg to have a face and a mouth to talk to you. And the Borg Queen was that. But then the concept of the Borg Queen also transferred to Voyager. And Voyager basically kind of ran the concept of the Borg to the ground. And from an actually scary villain, they kind of became this like, oh no, it's the Borg again.
Yeah. Although we did get 7 of 9 out of Voyager.
Yeah, 7 of 9 is kind of the only good thing the Voyager did with the Borg. But even 7 of 9 was like kind of a rehash of You, just more expanded, which was good. It was a good concept. But the thing is, we don't really need the Borg as enemies anymore. They're just, conceptually, they've just run out of steam, But Picard was, of course, famous for his fights with the Borg, so of course we gotta have the Borg back. And also, another villain of Picard that has to come back is Q.
I mean, well, of course. I mean, who else is going to orchestrate the whole plot of the season 2 except Q?
Q. Yeah, so Q comes back, and he's up to his shenanigans again. He transfers Picard and his buddies to the past. The Romulan kid that Picard mentored, he dies almost instantly in like the second episode of the second season.
Yep.
Yeah.
So much for being like the first Romulan in Starfleet.
And Picard and his friends are they're not just transported to the past, they're transported to an alternate timeline, and they have to go back to the past to stop the timeline from happening.
Mm-hmm. And let's be clear, it's not like a timeline with themselves, it's a much earlier timeline that involves one of Picard's ancestors.
Yeah, and they have to go back to the 21st century. And it's like, did you really have to do that? We don't want to watch shows about the 21st century in Star Trek. We live in the 21st century. It's not that interesting. Yeah, so Picard and Seven of Nine and Raffi and Jurati and
Yeah.
the Borg Queen. What?
Rios.
And Rios, yeah,
Yeah.
they all get transported to the past. A lot of things happen and none of them matter. A lot of things happen and none of them matter.
Well, let's back up a second. So, when you talk about the second season involving the Borg, it's because it opens with the Borg, what seems to be like attacking this Starfleet ship, right?
Yeah,
They don't know why, and then that's of course when like Q shows up, and then things start involving time travel.
yeah,
So the Borg, I mean, they are involved in the season, but guess who else is a returning character who's causing problems in the past?
yeah.
It's
Um,
it's Brent Spinner.
it's Brad Spinner, this time as a Sung.
Yeah.
One of the many Sungs. Apparently there's a Sung just that every year there's just a Sung there.
Yeah.
And they always look like Brad Spinner.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So that's I mean, like I said, a lot of things happen and they don't really matter. Um, just there's a subplot about the police, and there's a subplot about immigrants, and there's a subplot about uh, the Watchers. You does anybody remember the Watchers from the 7 season of Next Generation?
No.
The kind of weird, exactly the weird group that like. Oh, and also of course the second season of the original series.
Yeah. And there's also like kind of a Picard romance subplot.
There is a romance subplot. Again, none of that matters. And there's of course a subplot about like this childhood trauma that
Oh yeah, with
Picard
his
had.
mother.
Yeah, with his mother. Like none of this makes any difference whatsoever to the story. We didn't need it. We just didn't need it. The entire story was about, the Borg Queen, and at the end, just the Borg Queen and Jurati just kind of merge, and Jurati just convinces her to get her, and that's it. That's it.
It's like the Borger or the first episode, and then they go into the past. All this stuff happens. Q's orchestrating this and that. People die. Romance plots and people finding romance in the past and all this other stuff. And then they essentially achieve their objective, and then Q zips them right back to where they were in the first episode. And it's done.
And I just want to say, like I said, the first season introduced us to a bunch of new characters. There is, like I said, there is Data's sort of daughter. What's her name? I forgot her name.
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah.
All I know is she becomes kind of like an ambassador or something and visiting people after what happens in season 1.
So she's introduced in season 1. In season 2, in like the first episode, we found out she's like an ambassador, and that's the last we see of her. We're introduced to Rios, who is the disgraced captain of Starfleet.
Yeah.
At the first season, at the end of the first season, he goes back to Starfleet. Then in the second season, he goes back to the past and decides to stay in the past. So he is effectively dead. At the end of the season, he's effectively dead.
Yeah.
We are introduced to Dr. Jurati in the first season, who is kind of like this checkered professor who is willing to do all kinds of unethical things, but feels bad about it. And in the second season,
she's like a former Starfleet doctor, right?
I don't think so, actually. I think she just worked with Sung, right? I don't know.
Okay, well, in other words, she's kind of working for the bad guys, but yeah, she's very integral to the development of the synthetics.
Yeah, and the second season she merges with the Borg, and effectively she's no longer like Jurati. She's a different person. She is also kind of dead. Who else? Who's also a new character? they're basically killing off the new characters one by one by the end of the second season until, like I said, the only character of the staying power, which is Raffi, is the only one to remain.
Well, 7 of 9.
She's not a new character. She's
That's
a
true.
Voyager.
That's true. That's true. She's not a new character. I was trying to think of somebody who survives with Picard. Raffi.
And Raffi.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's it. That's it.
Well, what about the Picard's love interest? I mean, technically she.
Oh, right.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
So like the two people who die, Elnor and his love interest, who die in the past, Q brings them back.
No, Elnor is not brought back. Elnor is still dead. Elnor is the guy. Is the Romulan that Picard mentored. And yes, Elnor is dead. Yeah, Elnor is dead. He's dead.
Is he? Because I thought Q fixed that.
No, he's dead.
Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't see that.
No, he's dead. Sorry. He's dead.
So then what about the love interest? Q did something.
Okay, she's alive.
Okay.
The love interest is the Romulan that Picard has in his home, which we get to see once in the first episode of each season. And if you're lucky, we may see her again at the end of the season. We see her again at the end of the first season and the second season. By the way, the second season ends with Picard deciding he's willing to love again. And he enters into a relationship with this Romulan that works for him. Her name is Laris, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And spoilers for the third season, we see her in the first episode and then never hear from her again.
I know.
She's not dead, but we just never hear from her again.
She just kind of says, I gotta go off and do my own thing. Bye.
Yeah, but yeah.
Maybe dealing with Picard and all his weird mental trips back into his childhood drove her away.
Maybe. But we just never hear from her again, and that's it. That's it.
So, but we open in the third season where I guess Laris is in the first episode and she's, are you sure you want to pack all your stuff up? What about your legacy? He's like, there don't need to be any more Picards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that plays into the theme of season 3.
Yeah. So season 3 is probably the season with the most cameos. Just all the cameos in season 3. Actually, we opened season 3 not on Picard, but on Beverly Crusher and her new son, Jack Jr. Crusher. Well, he's not Junior, he's Jack Crusher, but he's named after her dead husband, Jack. So she and her son, Jack Crusher, who's 20-something, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Apparently, Beverly kind of decided to quit Starfleet and become this, renegade doctor.
She dropped off the radar, essentially.
Yeah, but she's still doctoring all over the universe.
Yeah, and she's Doctor of the Universe, but Picard makes some comment nobody's heard from her in 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, she's back.
Well, she's back, and she, of course, she's in trouble, and she asks for help from Picard. So Picard and Riker. Riker had a cameo in the first season. Now he has a prominent role. Picard and Riker go visit the Titan where 7 of 9 is now serving, because 7 of 9 is also back in Starfleet.
And just to be clear, Riker at this point is no longer in command of the Titan.
Yeah, he's also kind of retired.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go and visit 7 of 9 on her new posting, and they kind of kidnap the ship and go and help Beverly.
I started getting a lot of original series movie feels at this point.
A lot. I mean, I'm just saying, the entire story of Picard and Beverly and Jack is very much Kirk and, everything that happened to him.
And David his
Wrath of God.
His old love interest who had a kid he didn't know about. When I got into the finale, because I skipped that whole middle part. But the beginning of the first episode of season 3, I was like, wait a minute, isn't this like them stealing the Enterprise
Yep. Yep.
in
Yep.
the original series movies? And then that feeling did not go away once I watched the finale. It got worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So they go and help Beverly, and along the way, the rest of the Next Generation crew joins them, and Raffi too.
Yep.
Yeah. As it turns out, spoilers, I guess, Jack Crusher is Picard's son, as we alluded to. He's Picard's son that Beverly never told Picard about. I'll say this. They also go, oh, by the way, Data, who is, again, Data is dead. He died in the first season, right?
Again.
Well, again. Well, guess what? Data comes back to life again.
Yeah.
They kidnap his body from Star Trek vaults, and he's like, and they kind of put him back together, and now he's alive again.
But that's, that just is not in keeping with what happened in the finale of season 1, because that was all about his like consciousness and wanting to be erased, basically.
Yeah.
Which we thought Picard did at his request.
Yeah.
Soda, I remembered there's one other person who died in season 2 we didn't mention.
Yeah.
Q.
Q, right.
It's supposedly the end of Q. He had his very I guess sentimental goodbye with Picard.
Yeah.
His only friend.
His only friend. Yeah. We were talking about third season though, and third season.
And Data.
Well, Data. Yeah, they bring Data back again. Yeah. And, Jack Crusher, who's Picard's son, he also has a British accent. They just give the funniest explanation as for why. He went to high school, like, in Britain, and the accent
in
just
London,
stuck.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of raised in London or went to boarding school there or something, who knows, and he acquired a British accent and never dropped it. Surprise.
Yeah. Surprise.
I mean, really, more of a surprise that, Beverly and Picard had a son Picard never knew about.
Because, let's see, even 20 years ago, they weren't very young.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was in the back of my mind going, like, wait, does Wesley know he has a brother?
I don't think so.
I mean, are you saying that, like, literally she then spent the rest of her life hiding this child?
I guess. I mean, I guess that's why she never talked to anyone she knew from back then for the last 20 years.
It's crazy.
It is. It is crazy. I mean, in Kirk's case, it was like a woman no one else knew, so it wasn't like she had to work at hiding the kid. But Beverly...
And they really did, like, break up, and he,
she just moved away.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Beverly literally had to just hide in the corners of the universe to hide that fact that she had a kid with Picard.
Yeah. He becomes known to the enemy, who, obviously wants him for reasons, kind of like, galaxy domination, or more so over the Federation.
So here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. Season 3 is kind of better received than the other two seasons, and for a good reason. It had a much better start than the other two seasons. It didn't feel like it was just kind of treading water, or kind of trying to form a plot out of nothing, which is what the first two seasons did. And it brought back a villain no one expected them to bring back. And it wasn't even a Next Generation villain.
Yeah.
Yeah. They brought back the Changelings from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the changes were actually an interesting villain because the last we saw of them, they suffered like not only a humiliating defeat by Starfleet. The defeat came about because of very unethical means that Starfleet employed. They basically threatened them with genocide.
Mm-hmm.
So it does actually make sense for them to want revenge.
Yeah.
Why against Picard specifically? Well, turns out that the changelings aren't just working alone. They're working for an even bigger villain.
Yeah.
And throughout the entire season, we just kind of get teased about who this bigger villain is. And because those are changelings from Deep Space Nine, there are a lot of theories that the bigger villain is also from Deep Space Nine. People were at the edge of their seats, and sadly, it was all for naught.
Yeah, but the question was like, why were they after Jack?
Yeah.
The changelings were essentially like, there's just one that was like a bounty hunter trying to get Jack.
Yeah.
At the direction of a bigger, badder enemy. But
Yeah.
why? That was like, why? And that would lead you to maybe understand who the bigger, badder villain was.
Yeah, and more than that, Jack seemed to exemplify really weird abilities
Mm-hmm.
and have weird visions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was not only like Beverly and Picard's son, he was a special kid.
He was special. Yeah, he had superpowers.
So at what point did
Yeah.
you guess the villain?
I'll say I suspected, but but I kept just thinking, no, they wouldn't do it again. The moment it became clear there is a bigger villain, I was like, no, they're not going to do it again. Not again. There was a popular fan theory that the bigger villain was the Power Wraith from the Deep Space Nine, which they kind of dropped hints, red herrings for that. There were there was this conversation when the changeling mentioned ears. And very specifically touched their ears the way the Bajorans do.
Yeah.
And the visions, Jack's visions were all red. And he got like these weird red eyes when he saw them. And people were like, it could make sense. But of course, eventually, we found out that the big villain was... It was the Borg. It was the Borg again. We've had the Borg again. Again, the Borg. The Borg again.
So, forget whatever they were trying to do in season 2.
Yeah, I don't get it. We never even mentioned the Jurati Borg.
Exactly.
Ever again.
I don't understand. That confused me the most was I was like, wait, the Borg is back? And okay, the Borg is the big bad. The Borg obviously wants to assimilate the Federation. They're getting the changelings to help them, but wait a minute. I thought they were doing something good in season 2 or something less villainous.
Yeah.
So I was confused. It didn't track for me.
Yeah. It's not just the Borg. It's not all the Borg. It's just the Borg Queen. The Borg Queen is alone. She has no drones.
Yep.
And she wants to use Jack to turn all of Starfleet into her drones.
And the whole thing is that he's got some kind of special something in his DNA because Picard was,
Borgified.
Was Borgified, and then Jack was conceived after he was unborgified.
Yeah. So something about Jack is special because of that. Yeah. It felt like a very weak payoff for the entire season. For me, it felt like a very weak payoff.
I think the changelings probably were more under the impression they needed Jack to for his DNA to impersonate Picard or something to blow up the Daystrom station or whatever it was.
Yeah.
To commit some kind of terrorist attack, basically.
Yeah.
which I think Rafi did not prevent.
She did not prevent.
Even though that's what she was working her way towards, sort of.
Yeah. Rafi's part in this season is that she's kind of doing black ops. She's like undercover spying, trying to find out who is the big bad guy of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then she joins forces with Worf, and then she and Worf join forces with the other older cast of the Next Generation. We get Geordi, we get Riker, we get Troy, and of course Beverly and Picard, and Data. As mentioned. There are good points in the season. I mean, we get Ro Laren back. She's back briefly for only one episode, but she's back and her story is resolved, which is nice. That was very nice to see her again. There is a story about Seven of Nine gets a lot more this season, I think. A lot more screen time, a lot more development, which is also nice. Seven of Nine has also kind of a off again relationship with Raffi.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to see.
Yeah.
But when the story is about Picard, it's just boring.
Oh, okay. So let me tell you, from my perspective, I watched the first episode and the season finale, and my whole takeaway was: is this a movie? Is this just like the plot of a movie, like taken from the original series movies? Especially when I watched that recap, I was like, okay, so. Somebody's in trouble. They have to steal a Starfleet ship, and go rogue. And then they uncover this plot that involves terrorism and a bunch of like space fights, and then Picard, like the crew being the Titan crew, being in jeopardy, and Picard having to make a hard choice, and then there's a kid. Picard's got a kid he didn't know about. I was kind of having whiplash. I was like, am I watching like another Star Trek movie, different plots put together, stretched out over a season?
Yeah, it's basically it.
Yeah, because then when I came into the finale, basically all of the old Next Generation crew was together, had been reunited. There were some new people, but they were essentially trying to defeat the big bad Borg Queen, and they were making a lot of like it was like a lot of fan moments in that.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just like a fan service movie. What is happening?
Yeah.
And of course, we resolve it all because Picard now has a son, and therefore he has a legacy, and okay.
Yeah. The end of the third season, it's supposed to be the last season of Picard, but it feels like it's like a backdoor pilot for a 7 of 9 show with Raffi and Jack.
Yeah. Yeah, but also like let's get the old band together one last time to go save the galaxy.
Yeah, but this time we really mean it. This is the last time, we swear.
Well, I mean, like, okay, first off, how many times did you kill Data or bring it back?
Yeah. At least at the end of the first season, they don't kill him again. At least. You just let him leave.
How many times have you used the Borg now? Well, it's the Borg Queen specifically. She's still the big bad villain, like from the movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was basically felt like I was watching the Next Generation, like the final movie. Movie number.
This is the final.
The final
This is
movie.
the final time. Yeah.
I mean, they even call the episode "The Last Generation."
Yeah. And to end insult to injury, at the last, there is a kind of a post-credit scene where Jack meets Q. Even Q isn't dead anymore.
So what was that whole sad farewell? My only friend.
What was the sad farewell at the end of season 1 between Data and Picard? Same thing. Nothing matters.
Or the sad farewell of Picard himself to Data's daughter when, oh, well, don't worry about it. They're just going to put you in a synthetic body. They're just going to transfer your whatever.
Yeah.
Nobody ever dies.
No, they except for the original characters from Picard. They're dead. They're
Yeah.
dead. They don't come back. I just yeah. The third season had some interesting moments, nice moments, but overall, Picard just felt like a completely unnecessary addition to Star Trek, the franchise. Just we did not need this. There was no point to it. It did not advance anything. I don't know who. Maybe some hardcore Next Generation fans really enjoyed it. But it seems to me like the overall consensus is that it's not a very good show.
One thing, I had to go back and look this up because I could have sworn he didn't actually die. Eleanor was resurrected by Q. Eleanor,
What?
he was resurrected by Q. I wasn't crazy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Q, remember he said he was just going to leave a gift for Picard? It turns out he resurrected Eleanor and the love interest.
Oh, okay.
Well, we don't see him again, though, so... You know, he's like there, he dies early, doesn't have any parts, and then he gets resurrected. And Picard, I remember that because like Picard gave him a book on like Spock's memoirs or something, since he's like the first Romulan in Starfleet. But then we don't see him again as a returning character in season 3. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
he's not dead, but he did die. But he came back. You know, lots of resurrection too.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just taking all the names from like the Next Generation movies,
Maybe. Maybe.
using them as plot devices.
Could be. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry. I was very negative this podcast, but I really just kind of tried, and I really hope they don't try to make anything like this again soon.
Yeah.
Just there is really it's so unnecessary. Stop going back to the past, please. Star Trek franchise, stop going back to the past. We don't need it.
Well, I mean, look at Lower Decks, right? It's all new characters. But there's references to things that we love, and that seems to work
Yeah.
really well. But yet, we're getting all new canon material.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
yeah.
Stranger Wars. Don't go back to things you've already seen. We don't
Hmm.
need more Picard. We don't need more Geordi. We don't need more Data. We don't need more Riker. We don't need more. You know what? As much as I love them, we do not need more Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
I was going to say, we don't need more Spock because they brought him back in Discovery,
And
where they
Lower
kind of like
Decks.
inserted him, and
And,
now.
and Strange New World, I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's all kind of set in the past.
Yeah. But we don't need a Spock show. We don't need a Kirk show.
Hmm.
The original series was kind of the Kirk show. We don't need a Scottish show. We don't need those things.
Well, you know, they always teased about bringing back William Shatner as Kirk, and they just could never seem to make it work.
It's better this way.
Yes.
It's better this way. Yeah. Just move forward. Tell new stories about new characters.
I mean, to your point, how many original characters from Picard actually survived?
Exactly. Because there weren't. It just wasn't a very well written show, and because it was all around Picard and the Next Generation, it just didn't. They didn't let the new characters like stand on their own.
Yeah. Maybe they were just really hoping a couple of them would, like, be the stars of the show, the memorable original characters, and then, like you said, they can do a spin-off from
Yeah.
that. I don't know. I mean, Raffi has her problems. And then she also has her problems with Seven of Nine. Their relationship is not solid.
No, it's not. And she's not a perfect person, but she's an interesting character. I
Yeah.
think. At the end of the day, that's what makes her interesting. Her
I
flaws.
liked what I saw of him, Rios. I have no idea.
Rios is kind of. Yeah.
I just don't understand why he stated the past.
Rios was kind of one note,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest. Like he was a guy with with PTSD. Basically, that was his personality.
Yeah.
A guy with PTSD.
But
Yeah,
here's the thing. He was a former Starfleet officer. He had PTSD. He went back to Starfleet. He was like captaining the ship. And
yeah,
you could have done something with that. I mean, look at the PTSD they gave Pike.
exactly.
But he's overcoming it, and Strange New Worlds is turning out to be a pretty good show.
Yeah, but Pike has room to grow. Rios doesn't have room to grow
That's what I'm
because
saying. Like,
Picard and Data, taking all the limelight.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but why couldn't you have kept a character like Rios around and then given him room to grow in a spinoff? So he's not just a one note.
Exactly, because
I mean,
because it was
look at Girardi. Girardi was a complex character. She was well, I wouldn't say complex. She was very morally gray.
yeah.
Like, was she helping the good guys or the bad guys, or just really after her own agenda and just kind of flip flop around? But someone like that could live long as a character if you give them enough to work with.
Yeah, but that's the problem. He did not. I mean, all the
No,
characters had
she somehow got
potential.
merged with the Borg, with the Borg Queen. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
mean
understand that at all. I mean, at all. But I
yeah,
got the feeling that nobody understood that because they were all too busy, like, being focusing on the time travel part in the middle of the season.
exactly.
What was the whole point of? Help me understand though. What was the whole point of her merging with the Borg?
She kind of convinced the Borg. She kind of tricked the Borg Queen. I don't remember exactly, but she kind of tricked the Borg Queen into saving her life, I think. And then the Borg Queen kind of took over her, but then Girardi's personality took over the Borg Queen, and they kind of made a deal with each other.
So this all happened like
Um,
within 30 seconds,
kind of, yeah.
because we don't
No,
really
it
get
took
to
a few.
see it. Let's be
It
honest.
took a few episodes. It took a few episodes, I think, but mostly of the Borg Queen running around in Girardi's body doing scary stuff. But yeah, but between this and Picard's like history nonsense and Raffi and Seven having shenanigans in the past and Rios finding love in the past, it was a lot of nothing. The second season was a lot of nothing.
Because it all essentially gets
Erased. Yeah.
erased. Yeah. I mean, it's like a season. It's like a whole season that is basically like one episode content.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it.
Well, you're making me not feel like I did a disservice to myself by not watching the show.
No, you probably saved a few hours of your life to do more beneficial things.
So, are there any call outs as far as, well, I mean, we talked about the love interest, for example, Picard and
Yeah.
his, I don't know, didn't come to fruition love interest with the Romulan.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't really rehash his love interest with Beverly.
Not really, no.
Thank God.
Yeah.
The love interest, of course, well, sort of the, let's just say, interest between like 7 of 9 and Raffi, because it's on again, off again, like you said.
Yeah. At the end of the series, it's on again. Well,
Yeah,
it
well,
seems
of
to be on
course.
again. Yeah.
um, there was a couple of other side characters in season 1.
Yeah, I guess. But they're not very interesting.
Once again, as Kurtzman put it, like he just wanted a whole show about a psychological analysis of Picard. Picard is number one star. It's Picard having guilt and having grief, and then having like mental trips back to his childhood. And then
Yeah.
deciding he needs to save somebody, and then deciding he needs to save somebody again. Yeah, we just literally follow Picard for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
They did what they set out to do, I guess.
I don't know if we really, psychological exploration of Picard. Do we? I feel like we had a few.
I left it as like he's still as mysterious as he always was.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, we see some childhood trauma. We see really is affected by like Data's death and how much he cared about him. Like some of those things. But
yeah,
does that? I don't know how to put it. I didn't come out knowing him any better.
exactly. I watched the entire show and it didn't come out knowing any better. I felt like I said, I felt like there are several episodes of Next Generation that explore Picard way better than those 3 seasons did.
Yeah. So do we think that that's another big part of the problem is typically when you have a show, multiple seasons, you're following through characters like through a character arc,
Yeah,
like some kind of evolution or
yeah,
de-evolution. Maybe they go from good to bad, whichever way it goes. That's usually the characters are the things that keep people coming back, probably more so than the plot. It seems like we kind of they missed on the mark of the characters too.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, so that was my kind of jumbled, but I think you can kind of get gist of review of Picard. I can't recommend it for anyone aside from maybe the most hardcore Next Generation fan.
What little things did you like?
Well, I did enjoy seeing more of Seven of Nine and what happened to her since she returned from Voyager. Seven and Raffi's relationship was interesting. Raffi is an interesting character. I get why she had the staying power.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the third season, I liked the return of Ro. She was interesting. But that's basically it.
What about the nostalgia factor for the next generation?
I don't really have nostalgia for the next generation.
Okay.
I mean, I never watched Star Trek before like 2016 or
Mm-hmm.
so. And I only watched Next Generation, at around, 2018 or 17. I can't remember. But I didn't grow up watching it.
I didn't grow up watching it either, but I always have great nostalgia for the original series just because I love it so much. So I'm wondering, like, how that would have played into the viewers who watched the show, like you said, who were more hardcore Next Generation fans.
I imagine they enjoy watching the characters they grew up. I mean, you not even grew up, the characters they enjoyed watching as young people, as young, men and women, as older men and women. And look, I'm happy for them, but it's just we could have had just one season and be done with it.
Hmm. And another thing that kind of distinguishes this from the older shows is this is not episodic.
Yeah,
The format of it is you're following a full storyline or story arc from episode 1 to the finale in each
true.
season. And some of the plot threads kind of continued on into the other seasons, but you're not getting like a moral of the story type show here. Not with what for example, they're bringing back in Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, true.
That could probably play into the enjoyment of people who watch Picard because maybe some people just really like Star Trek as like a episodic format delivered that way.
Yeah,
But then maybe new fans who watch, say, Discovery, who were used to more of the, following it through, watch Picard and then that was just familiar to them.
the thing is, would people who only watched Discovery enjoy Picard?
No, they would not. They would be like, have a big question mark as far as a lot
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
background information. That's a good point for us to bring up is Picard when it starts is not you're going to have to do a lot of catching up if you've never seen the next generation. Or
Yeah,
even the opening of Star Trek 2009 movie with like Romulus being destroyed.
Yeah.
Do you think they did a good job of explaining that in season 1 as the first few episodes aired?
I actually think they did. They did a lot
Yeah.
of like background
Yeah.
explanation there.
And flashbacks.
Also, yeah, and also about the Rwandan refugees and all of that.
But for example, if you come into season 2, you don't know, and you've never seen Next Generation, you don't know who Q is. You don't know what his like long relationship with Picard is about.
Yeah.
And why he would even pick Picard to assist or to use him to help save the day. Like, you don't know those things.
Exactly.
Wouldn't mean anything to you. So
Yeah.
in general, Picard is not a show for new watchers of Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not for newcomers, but it's in a format that might appeal the most to newcomers. So
Yeah. Well, do we have anything else we want to cover for Picard?
not for me, no. I said everything I had to say about that.
Yeah, well, we'll leave it up to our listeners to, share their own perspective on Star Trek Picard show. We just want to thank everybody for listening. Again, this is not intended to be like a podcast where we just rip apart Star Trek material that we love. Just sometimes you're given a Star Trek show that you just don't really connect with, or that doesn't seem to hold up to, I think, the expectation and standards that we Star Trek fans have in general for the franchise.
Yeah, and just like we know how to praise the ones that we do love, we can also criticize the ones that we don't.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back with another podcast.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.